Welcome back to another World End Economica. So, let's continue reading. The man crawled along the floor to run away, then turned around. What the? It's just a brat. If you think I'm a brat, want to go for round two? Training up my body had really been convenient for a lot of things. The debt collector shook his head violently and looked up at me through servile eyes because he got his ass whooped. So, a debt collector's one of those types, eh? They even have the right to do all this? Well, I figured. So, what are we gonna do? Uh huh. I said, what should we do? Should we call the cops or are we really gonna do some debt collecting? The debt collector clearly gulped. However, afterwards, he lowered his gaze. At most, I'd be lectured at all night in detention. Besides, if you call the cops, I will just read them this loan statement. I don't really want to since it costs me some fees, but I could totally just to get the courts to foreclose on you. Well, aren't we a spunky one? I moved my knee up to scoot over to him, but he suddenly pulled back, so I wasn't able to force him down anymore. And with that, I remembered one thing from my training. If your opponent stopped yielding, go for negotiations. Humph, well, you're here for the interest and fees, right? Yeah, see, you understand, right? In this world, you can't just borrow money and refuse to show even the smallest signs of paying it back. Besides, I got totally treated like trash. The debt collector glanced over at Hagana. Following his lead, I also looked over. She was cowering against the wall, like a pinned butterfly. When the money was lent out, it was all humility and everything, you know? Well, I guess it was Lisa who was lowering her head. Well, I can kind of see that. Oh, you see, right? Why do I have to put up with being called a dung beetle or space trash? Space trash. More like space scum. Looking at Hagana past the grumbling debt collector, I could see her looking downwards and staring at us with sullen, childish eyes. Besides, it's not like I'm asking for the entire principal back. I know that it's impossible anyway, but this is also a business, so I'd like for the interest to be paid back at least. And as he said that, there's no money here for you, Hagana yelled out. The debt collector shrugged and turned towards me with, "See, I told you," written on his face. He's probably in the right. I heaved a sigh of resina- resignation and resign, resignation and looked up at him. He can't even pronounce that word. So how much? What? The interest. How much is it? Oh, his face lit up. Don't tell me that you're gonna. Depends on the amount. Uh, Saying too much might result in the offer's retraction, but saying too little might end up with losing money. I could see the guy tackling this question in his mind for a moment until he finally came up with an answer. 200 mules. I remembered how Lisa reacted when I had given her 200 mules, so this was it, huh? So that's this month's interest. Or this year's interest? This month's. Since my top blew over and I did a bunch of things, this is lower than usual. It's actually 6% annual interest on a 50,000 mule principal. Compound interest is kind of annoying, so I had just set it at 250 mules a month. Since I had totally thought that this was some shady loan deal, I was surprised at the relatively low interest rate here. To hide my surprise, I ordered him coldly, "Show me the loan agreement." What? At first, the debt collector was speechless, but eventually he reluctantly showed it to me. Those numbers he quoted were certainly written down here. I sighed again and stuck my hand into my pocket. Here. I had run out of 100 mule bills, so I carefully counted out 200 mules worth of bills and handed it to him. He reached out carefully as if I would smack him the moment he laid hands on the money. After receiving the money, he hunched over the money and counted furtively. It's good. All right. Well then, I'll be. Huh? Wait up. I swept his leg quickly with my front leg, causing him to fall over. Then I got up, walked over to him, put my knee in his face, and squatted down. You got some nerve not giving me the receipt. Aren't you a student? Talk about money doesn't bother me. You tell me. After I said that, the debt collector resigned himself, cut me a receipt, and returned dejectedly. I leaned against the magnificent door of this church, in which hung a crucified man, and saw the man's faint silhouette before looking back at the receipt in my hand. 200 mules of interest was probably a large amount of money in these parts. If I wanted to earn 200 mules with the job Lisa offered to refer me to, it would take 4 to 5 days worth of income to come up with that amount. Furthermore, in that period of time, there would be food expenses and rent, along with other consumables and such that must be paid. In other words, low income meant you couldn't save up money. If you couldn't save up money, you couldn't invest. And if you couldn't invest, you'd be forced to make money by selling your time forever. A shovel could not fill a giant hole. Oh man. You could only fill a giant hole by pushing a snowball down a hill until it snowballed into enormous proportions. I actually hadn't seen snow before, but I had heard advice before about investments and really liked this particular analogy involving snowballs. Simply put, that's why these 200 moles weren't just 200 moles to me. It's something that could become 10,000 moles, or even 1 million moles in the future. When Lisa returns, I'd have to get my money back. At least, I saw her putting 200 moles in the cupboard. I wasn't going to let her just say she didn't have it. Oh boy. While pondering that, I crossed the prayer hall and returned to the living room. Hagana was putting the furniture back in place. She was emotionless, but somehow I got the feeling that she was angry. It was probably the rough way she was handling the overturned table and kicked up carpet. I would prefer not to refer to her by something that would give off an aura of prettiness, such as girl. However, Hagana unmistakably possessed a delicate XX chromosome, so she was as weak in body as she was strong in spirit. Wow, really. It would be a different story if you had just arrived from Earth. But for people who have lived on the moon for a long time and had gotten accustomed to the low gravity, they'd only be able to deliver a proportionately low amount of force as well. And by the way, I don't know. I'm either using Bandicam or OBS to record this. It really depends because some of the recording usually cuts off. She was trying to put the big sofa back in its place, but it wasn't going too well. She must have noticed me standing in the doorway, but she hadn't asked for any help. She looked like she was just short of telling me that she wouldn't ask for help from the likes of me. I thought she was a cheeky girl, so there was no obligation for me to help. Besides, she hadn't even thanked me yet. I walked past the doorway and was about to go back to my room. I heard a voice just as I was passing by Hagana. Why won't you help? She couldn't move the sofa back in place because she couldn't lift it at all the way up, and the leg was stuck. She tried picking it up from different angles, but none of those attempts worked. Even though she was panting lightly, her eyes were fixated on the task with the weight of a dumbbell. Furthermore, it looked like her princess hubris was in full force. I sighed heavily and replied to her, why do I need to help if I haven't been asked? Sure enough, Hagana lowered her head. With her slender chin and slender neck, her lowering her head made her a textbook example of a delicate girl. My eyebrows wrinkled as I wondered if she was really putting on a show, but she answered me with the following. If I asked, would you help? I could feel my face twitching, but if I got mad now, I'd hate myself for acting like a baby. Hence, I prepared myself and answered, yeah, don't be no man-child. Yeah. Help me out. Good. I looked back at Hagana in surprise. She was staring back at me with pure black eyes. Doesn't look black eyes to me. When I looked at her, are you deaf? She continued with a 1-2 combo, just like a relentless princess with a whip. If they push, retreat. When they retreat, push. Hagana's great at arguments. While feeling regret, I really had to help her now that I said I would. Alright, I get it. Shit. What was that last one? She asked me to repeat what I said, and I clicked my tongue angrily. Hearing that, Hagana totally looked condescendingly at me, wondering what was with this baboon. Well then, I felt that it was not in my best interest to let Hagana into my view, so I averted my eyes, put my hands on the fallen sofa, lifted it up without bending my knees. Lifting it above her body height was a little bit of rebellion on my part. Keeping it in that position, I asked her, "Oh, where would you like this placed, my lady?" I asked her, injecting ample amounts of disdain into my tone. However, Hagana didn't show any signs of caring. She looked over at the carpet immediately and pondered. It seemed that my disdain raised not an inch of ire from her. She really got on my nerves. The rear leg should line up with this spot. The sofa should face perpendicular to this way. After being instructed briefly, I lowered the sofa as she had instructed since I didn't feel like nitpicking. It's a bit crooked. Being told that, I gritted my molars, took a deep breath, and was somehow able to suppress my anger. Is it okay now? Satisfied? Yeah, it looks that way. Hagana nodded and turned around immediately to start collecting the various little items scattered on the floor. No words of appreciation came my way. I wasn't expecting any to begin with, but I ended up feeling anger similar to disappointment. In the village where I grew up, if you did something for someone, they thanked you for it. If someone did something for you, you'd return the favor, of course. The culture over there, which I had considered simple, crude, and outdated, had somehow rooted itself strongly in me. I scratched my head while trying to contemplate all the differences between Hagana and me. I had gotten into a bad mood again, wasting the wonderful resuscitation I had enjoyed from Schrödinger's Street. Maybe I should go stroll through Red Valley sometime. On top of that, if I associated with Hagana anymore, there'd be a possibility I might end up laying hands on her. Of course, I didn't mean in the sexual sense, but in the physical violence sense. Oh jeez. I was about to leave the living room and walk into the hallway, leading to the inner rooms, and thus, when I heard a voice call out to me, I totally thought it was a hallucination. There weren't there aren't enough flowers. When I turned around, I saw Hagana putting a vase on the table and arranging the flowers. The stark contrast between the white lily-like flowers and the pitch-black Hagana in juxtaposition was remarkable. However, next to it were some poor flowers flattened by someone stepping on them. I guessed that's what she meant. So what? Get some for me. I was pretty much silent as I walked reflexively towards Hagana. If the following words hadn't popped out of her mouth, I would have probably walked right up to her and turned that graceful face of hers into tomato paste. Oh, great. Ain't that great? Please. My feet stopped instantly, and I ended up staring steadily at Hagana. She returned my stare in the same manner and said, I asked you to help. So, I should go to it as soon as possible, huh? I couldn't figure out what to say or how to say it. I had confidence in my processes, but when interacting with these women, I got a strong message that my head wasn't quite screwed on right. I had given my word, and Hagana had, at least in appearance, asked me to do something. Having gotten nothing, not even the thanks in return, I replied bitterly. What kind of flower is it? Staring at me with emotionless eyes as if saying that it's obvious what flower she was looking for, Hagana pointed her slender finger at the vase. I don't know where those grow. Me neither. Thinking, what? I furrowed my eyebrows and was about to jab Hagana in the chin, but Hagana's expression remained unchanged. But aren't you as nimble as a monkey? It should be more logical for you to search than me. Man, why did I have to follow her orders and even have to allow myself to be called a monkey? I wanted to yell at her, but Hagana paid no attention to me, spun her head around and looked at the vase again. Lisa grew these flowers. It would be a problem if there were less than 7. At that moment, my anger evaporated instantly. Her profile looked so pitiful. However, I quickly corrected my thinking and told myself it's just a show mimicking people with the double X chromosome. As long as you were born a pretty woman, no matter how rotten you were inside, you'd look like a beauty standing next to some flowers. Well, as long as it was a real problem, I could just go and get some. Even though my refutations were unrelenting, I ended up running off dejectedly to find some flowers. Of course, searching around blindly would be something an idiotic Earth dog would do. Well, excuse me. I took my computer out of my backpack, booted it up, and took a picture of the flower with its camera. I then used an image search on the net and determined what type of flower it was. Furthermore, since doing something bizarre like growing stuff like flowers on the moon could only be due to curiosity, I entered the flower's name and the name of the area around here. Having done that, I found a picture uploaded by some bored and or curious person at the flower nearby, and hooray! I located the whereabouts of this flower. Oddly, this post that came up had also something to do with the church. Oh, look, this. Isn't this just a cliff above us? A flower aff- aficionado, or whatever the word that is, aficionado, who lived nearby had written a post proudly proclaiming that he had taught Lisa how to grow flowers. This was surely the garden on the cliff that I had seen when I left this place earlier today, and I certainly had the feeling I saw a peak of blooming flowers too. I turned towards Hagana, who was busy with the cleanup and had occasionally snuck glances at me, and rotated the display towards her. I guess they're blooming on the cliff above us. I see. I need 2 flowers. Don't mess up. It didn't seem like she had even an ounce of inclination in, to retrieve the flowers herself. Having lost the will to get angry, I closed the computer and got up from the floor. I hopped up to the second floor and then onwards to the third floor. I stuck something in an annoying auto-locking door to keep it open and went outside. From the lights on the door, I could tell it was almost time for evening mode to kick in. Wow, this is a beautiful uh, view right here. A little bit of a tree, some house, and all that. Mm. The earth appeared in its usual location and showed me its faint blue figure. I scanned the garden, which had a great view and looked like it would be quite a nice place in which to hang out. After looking around, I found the lilies growing in a flower bed, just like in the photo. When I approached it, 5 flowers fluttered in the light breeze. Since they were so fresh, young, and full of life, I paused, wondering if I should really uproot them. Although I could not see any traces of 7 flowers having been uprooted before, there was no mistake the flowers Lisa had were originally picked from here. I pulled up 2, shook the dirt off them, and then carried them back down. When I got back, the living room had returned to normal, and Hagana was sitting at the table. She looked at the 2 lilies in my hands and frowned. What? You said 2, didn't you? The roots are still attached. Uh, I took a deep breath and responded slowly. Well, you didn't say that you didn't want the roots. I thought she just ignored that, but she stared at me for a bit and nodded in agreement. Disappointed, I handed the 2 lilies to Hagana. Hagana then grabbed a pair of scissors from the cupboard and started cutting out the flowers in the sink. Her firm movements gave the impression that she was quite experienced at this. Unfortunately, it was in appearance only. She was cutting them straight across the stem. You don't know how? I asked her quickly. How to what? Here, let me see. Why? She furrowed her brows in surprise, but as I approached her and stretched out my hand, she handed me the scissors and the flowers. For this situation, you should cut it diagonal to the stem. It basically sets the stem absorb water a lot more easily. Well, it didn't apply to everything, but it was a basic rule of thumb, as I had learned at home. I cut the two stems at an angle, and Hagana, who had been staring at my hands, looked up to me. Is that true? Probably. I said that with a shrug. Hagana showed a bit of rare emotion in response to my vague response. A slight wrinkle appeared on her forehead, and she lowered her chin. Well, it appeared that Hagana wasn't good with these types of things. Perhaps as a reaction to being stepped on all the time, I started flaunting my knowledge. So I take it you don't know that you're not supposed to store vegetables lying on their side. Vegetables? Their freshness still depend on whether you lay them on their side or stand them up. Hagana had a slightly startled face, as if she were saying that's impossible when she stared at me. She then brought her lips back together quickly. Oh hey, it looked like she was kind of angry. My heart sank for joy. Looked like she thought that I was making fun of her. That's a lie, right? Why don't you test it out? I immediately returned with a retort. My dad once said that just as humans would weaken if put in a different environment, vegetables would also weaken if placed in a different orientation from when they were growing. And therefore, there's a difference on how well they kept. It looked like she was just glaring at me, but eventually she looked around and looked at the flowers while speaking in almost a quiet whisper. I'll keep that in mind. I thought exhibiting oddly good behavior, but then her second line came out. Since I'll verify it someday. While still thinking cute couldn't really describe this woman, I did feel that this was the first time we were able to have a real conversation. Hagana retrieved the flowers from me without a word and still without a word placed them in the vase. That behavior made me sense a bit of humanity from her and wonder if I didn't really have to have such a prejudiced view. If anything, if the flower lover, Lisa, had raised these flowers, she'd be distraught if she came back to find some flowers missing. Hagana's consideration for Lisa and wanting to replenish the number of flowers, well, I'd have to say that it was girly. I thought that it would be really nice if some of that humanity could be directed towards me, but of course I couldn't say that aloud. Actually, I felt defeat at the point when I thought of that and chased those thoughts out of my head. Hmm, let's see, how much minutes? Oh, it's only been 22 minutes and we are on this part. I ended up holding myself in the room I was renting and spent the time searching for money spinners. Money spinners? I never heard of that before. I felt kind of depressed, but rather than wasting time and money roaming Red Valley aimlessly, I figured I might as well actually spend some time doing things related to making some bucks. Even the ever-changing world economy news headlines were full of things that could determine movements of the markets tomorrow. If my rivals throughout the world were going to read these articles to plan for tomorrow's trades, then ignoring the news would give me a handicap for the battle ahead. To win the battle, I must do everything possible. Driven by something like obsession, I poured through these news stories, but there were limits to my concentration and patience. I could concentrate on actual trading for hours on end, but I'd gradually lose focus while doing this sort of manual labor that was akin to warm-up exercises. However, I managed to look through everything. By that time, I started feeling a dull pain in the back of my eyes, and the light outside my window indicated it was evening already. Amongst the investors of the world, anecdotes abounded about people who started investing when they were 5 years old and had never missed a day reading the top 10 economy newspapers for decades. Suddenly, I asked myself whether I had been spending my days in such a way that I'd be able to fight with them on an even footing. Right now, results had accompanied my trading. My seed money had grown. If only I can grow money from goddamn trees, from what I know. That's everyone's wish, per se. Recently, however, slump days of neither gains nor losses like yesterday had risen. If I broke even during actual trading, then I'd incur losses from the trading fees. Furthermore, my necessary living expenses added to those losses. It would be a lie to say that I wasn't uneasy. I was well aware that if there were days where I incurred losses or did not perform that well, then I'd be inclined to needlessly feel depressed about it, especially on the evening of the day when markets are closed at the end of a week. For those kids who actually went to school, they have club activities or play around for the day. The advent of a new week, just like the previous, brought a sense of stability. However, I had no such luxury since each new week would be an unpredictable week full of surprises. Back when I was in the village, I had dreamed of stimulating days like this every day, but the days when I held the opposite opinion had started to increase recently. This line of thought wasn't good, I felt. Feeling depressed brought nothing good. Going back to the village and attending school again was definitely impossible. Therefore, I needed to look forward and spend time constructively. Or productively, of course. I got up from the bed and, with my light headache spreading a frown across my face, I opened the computer again. Being able to do something about the tug of war being played on my funds would at least make me feel more relieved. With that in the back of my mind, I received one of the three scheduled emails of the day from a securities company. It was a mailing list service that sent information about shitty investment trusts and shady investment opportunities, but occasionally interesting info came out of it, so I decided to peruse it. As always, while I was staring at the table of contents, my mouse cursor had already reached the trash bin. However, what caused my hand to twitch and click the touch mouse was not that the email was full of crap, the opposite, in fact. Amongst the meaningless junk, there stood out the rare something that had some value, an invitation to an investment contest. I had heard a contest that invited people who excelled at stock trading, but was surprised that they had invited me. Furthermore, the grand prize was 200,000 mules. My current net worth stood at 70,000 mules, so if I won, I'd increase my funds threefold. However, what drew me in the most wasn't that. Within the invitation for this contest was the following set of cash lines. All eyes from Schrödinger Street are on this contest. In addition to the prize money, the winner might have the possibility of getting scouted. The winner last time, Mr. Tony Rudy, was recruited into Platina Smith, and the winner of the first contest, Mr. Yan Suhu, ended up starting his own hedge fund. What lies in store for the winner this third time? It was a bunch of cheap words intended to draw attention, but having been attracted, I couldn't reject those words. The prize money was obviously important, but the possibility of being able to set a foot in the door of Schrödinger Street, that single phrase totally blew me away. To work in such a firm the proper way, I'd have to study my butt off to get into a top tier university and graduate with the top grades with a top of the line major. Furthermore, I wouldn't just be competing with people from the moon, I'd also be competing with the selected few brilliant immigrants from Earth. Therefore, this was once in a lifetime opportunity for me. But even briefly looking through my current situation, I could see grim reality in the way. If I could repeat my fantastic dash that I managed to do right after leaving home, this prize could definitely be in my reach. However, right now I felt like I was in a tunnel with no visible exit. I probably needed some different type of methodology from what I'd been using up until now. While pondering that, I copied out the contents of the email and saved it just in case. Alrighty then. And now it's nighttime. I wasn't sure how much time had passed by, but I heard sounds signaling that Lisa had come back. It had gotten quite dark outside, and I just realized that I had been in my own world picking out stocks with the lights still off. I guess this was all I could really do, but I think my concentration level wasn't all that bad. My body made some crackling sounds as I stretched, and I headed for the living room while taking a break. At that instant, I smelled something delicious. My eyes turned unconsciously towards the kitchen. Hagana was in the middle of setting some Chinese food on the table. While wondering about when they had the time to cook, I noticed a large takeout basket under the table. Oh, I love Chinese food. Delivery? Lisa, who was taking out small serving plates from the cabinet, chuckled at my question. Leftovers, well, it's part of the reason why I work there. Well, I don't mind. As someone who constantly paid and ate at the Lunar Chinese restaurant, I had mixed feelings about this, but I had no qualms with the price and the taste. I quickly took my place at the table, but Hagana, who was still taking out food from the basket, stared unequivocally at me. Huh. Why aren't you helping? Because you didn't ask. I had lifted my hands up in a shrug to tease her, and she furrowed her brows. I was grinning smugly at my revenge for all the things she did to me when she delivered a surprise attack. Help out. Normally in these situations, just going to wasn't she just going to swallow those words silently in irritation? At least I had expected that she'd be all pissed off, look down and ignore me while she continued with the preparations. It seemed that Lisa also had the same thoughts. I guess Hagana really was a tough customer. While thinking about that, I got even more daggers from Hagana's eyes. They were saying, I asked you, so get to work now. I shrugged, got up from my chair, and set the plates and chopsticks I got from Lisa on the table. Lisa stared at the two of us intently. Well then, let's give our thanks to the Lord and Mr. Wang from the restaurant. With Lisa's words, dinner commenced. Huh, interesting. Basically, the food used plenty of ingredients that were on the verge of going bad, but there was pretty much no difference in taste. In fact, it was delicious. We polished off items that generally came in combo sets, like twice cooked pork, bell pepper pork stir fry, and egg rolls. Okay, now I'm goddamn hungry. What the hell, man? So, what did you do all day? Lisa asked us just as Hagana used her chopstick to block me from taking a third shumai from a platter that originally held six. Before I could respond to Hagana's don't you know division, Lisa used her own chopsticks to place a shumai each in Hagana's plate and mine. Hagana and I both looked back at Lisa, telling her that it was her share, but Lisa replied with, we must share what we have, and a smile. Apparently, it was written in the Bible or something. I shrugged and popped the shumai in my mouth. Hagana, who was more hesitant, ended up eating hers as well. Well, with that, I answered Lisa's question honestly. Went to Newton City. Oh, for what? To scope the place out for a bank heist. Lisa broke into laughter, treating it as nonsense, but I was surprised that Hagana was totally shocked. Duh, it's a joke. Wow. With my reply, Hagana's expression changed from one of surprise to one of irritation, and she looked down. She was, for some reason, a bit dense when it came to certain things. So, the real reason? I like those. I like those streets. That wasn't a lie. I munched on the salty pickled vegetables and then took a drink from my teacup. Pickled vegetable? Is it like pickled radish or something? It's a bit too lively for me. It's that liveliness that brings out my drive. I chomped down half of my third egg roll and then was realized was Hagana staring at me. Oh, there were only six of them to begin with. Lisa noticed us and quickly put one on Hagana's plate. I heard that Hagana only had this kind of appetite when it came to Chinese food. I don't know what you're doing with that drive, but in either case, that's pretty good. Hmm. I became a little humble when faced with Lisa's smile. I was wondering if she was making fun of me, but she had the usual carefree smile. Well, since I did provide you shelter, I would obviously be happy if you rested up and did your best. Oh, really? It's kind of pointless if you don't put in the effort yourself. Well, I guess. It's true. This is the moon after all. There was no point being here if you didn't work hard. If you wanted to just cruise along leisurely, then you could have done it on Earth. That's great. This is the moon after all. Lisa even mimicked my voice, causing me to choke on a piece of pork I had been eating. She was enjoying herself happily, but she was trouble in a different way from Hagana. Alright, then what about you, Hagana? What did you do today? Being perhaps satisfied with the usual teasing, Lisa had returned to Hagana and asked her what she did. I was also keenly interested in the reply. I wonder what she was doing all holed up in her room. She made no sound and occasionally got up to go to the bathroom. Hagana slowly finished her pepper pork stir fry as if she couldn't decide whether it was tasty or not, and then she replied unhurriedly. The same as usual. It was terribly blunt, but Lisa wasn't put off by it. So you got up, ate your meal, and hung up the laundry to dry, and then returned to my room to work on problems. Problems? I thought to myself. The whole time? I went to the bathroom once during the morning and continued to work on problems after getting back. So, did you solve them? 8 of them were pretty quick, but 4 of them took relatively longer. I see, that's pretty rare. For 4 of them to be that difficult. Difficult? Well, I wouldn't say that, but I think they were excellent problems. Hagana spoke with her eyes closed, as if she were pondering the problems again. Lisa broke out in laughter seeing Hagana like this. You really do like them, don't you? Hagana opened her eyes and slowly turned towards Lisa, and then a small blush developed on her cheeks. Mm-hmm. Lisa was beaming with an unparalleled smile at Hagana's response. I kind of felt like I was watching a doting parent, but I couldn't say that I couldn't understand a little of Lisa's feelings. I was also taken in by Hagana's reply, coupled with her rare show of embarrassment and her slight blush. I couldn't help feeling a sense of defeat. Then again, she did look pretty decent if she kept quiet. Besides, given that she normally only showed me either a sour face or a face of disdain, I ended up rationalizing with no one in particular that I couldn't help it. So, what are we talking about? Bothered by my internal conflicts, I tried to distract myself by saying something. Besides, I really was curious. Oh, we're just talking about math. Math? You don't even know what math is? Hagana stopped smiling and asked in response, out of what appeared to be surprise instead of belittlement. As if I weren't being made fun of, I lowered my voice and replied, Of course I know. Haven't I mentioned it before? Hagana's very good at math. If it were just math, she'd be totally able to attend Lunar City University right now. Every year, elite students from all over Earth come to attend Lunar City University. Even I knew how difficult it must be to get into such a place. So, were you working on the entrance exams? She already finished those. Right now, what was it you were working on again? On page 424 of Lloyd F. Steele's Mathematical Theorems. She replied immediately while drinking her soup. Oh, yeah, but you're already 400 pages in? In terms of the history of math, it's still stuff from some several hundred years in the past. I had no clue what they were talking about. I didn't think Hagana would actually explain it to me, and I'd be annoyed if I had to ask. Thus, I turned my gaze towards Lisa. Lisa, being her perspective self, explained it to me with a smile. It's a digital copy I borrowed from the university of a classic book on mathematics. It's a bizarre book that has collected tons of mathematical theorems. 5,621 theorems. Hagana snuck in a word while obsessively trying to split a steamed bun in half. We both turned to look at Hagana, then exchanged slight glances with each other. And so she's trying to rederive, rederive, whatever the word is, rederive proofs for all of these theorems. Rederive? Rederive? For example, with the Pythagorean theorem, you try to figure out on your own how to prove it. In other words, reconstructing this history of math built up over the past several millennia. Wow. Assuming it were true, I'd have no choice but to say awesome to that. I'd probably be able to even at least half forgive the way she looked down on me. In that case, why not just attend the university? With my super logical utterance, Lisa and Hagana both looked at me with pity. What? Even if it's just one subject, to totally ace it would give you a free pass in, right? It's not like there's age restrictions, right? There are no age limits, and tuition can be covered by a scholarship, but there is a problem, right? My mind was blank for a bit after Lisa's words, but eventually I got it. That's right, Hagana's a runaway. But limitations due to parents slash legal guardians, etc., only apply until she becomes an adult. Life is long, so might as well as take it easy in the meantime, right? Lisa smiled at Hagana. Hagana's nod at those words was filled with an air of earnestness. Seems that people have their reasons. I shrugged and drank some egg drop soup. So that's all you two did today? What do you mean all we did today? Well, for some reason after I came back, it seemed that there's even developments in how you treat each other. The soup in my mouth has. Oh my god. Wow. The soup in my mouth was inches from being spewed out. What the heck was that supposed to be? I kind of feel like something happened between you two that I don't know about. Would you care to fill me in? This woman sure loves to dig into details, even at the restaurant. This woman? Lisa asked back, full of smiles. However, those were certainly not smiles of happiness. I thought back to the last time I had stepped on this landmine. Uh, You sure love to dig into details. Yep, well, it's kind of like a job to me. Dig into details? Wasn't that a detective would do? Whew, wait, a job? Never heard of a strange job like that. Well, it's kind of a strange to call it a job. My duty? Well, something like that. It's not like I like doing it, you know? She said that, but it had to be a hobby, obviously. Besides, she herself didn't seem to be saying those words seriously. Wait, I'm getting sidetracked. Well, nothing really happened. Oh, wait. When I got that far in my sentence, there was a racket under the table. That was because I kicked up, and if you were to ask me why, it was because my opponent kicked my shins with all her might. Ow! What the hell are you doing, bitch? It was so abrupt that an angry yell was the most I could muster. While Lisa's eyes were wide open with surprise, I was surprised too. I didn't strike back immediately, not because I thought Lisa would get angry, but because I had no idea what the heck was going on. Hey, Hagana, what are you doing? Lisa asked the question, but Hagana turned away and stayed silent. What? Is she a kid? That type of behavior really makes her seem like a stubborn brat. While rubbing my shins, I was wondering whether she didn't want me to talk about it. I couldn't figure out exactly what would make her want to avoid that at all costs. What? So something did happen? Oh, well, there was that. As I was about to begin, Hagana glared at me. However, Lisa held Hagana back with her arms. And with that, Hagana looked like she was about to cry. I was surprised that Hagana would be so against my telling the story, but it appeared Lisa wasn't so. I could see it from Hagana's expression. With a light sigh, Lisa looked at me with a tired expression. Mr. Toyama came, I guess. Toyama? He didn't come here to collect on the debt? Hagana tried her best to stop Lisa, but once those words came out, the strength left her as if the end of the world had come. He sure did, and did you know, I was about to detail the ruckus that happened after I got back to the church, but then my eyes met Hagana's. Those eyes were filled with supplication. I was more than a little surprised that make such a surprised that such a pomp, pompous egotist being able to make such a face, making Toyama fly off the walls had probably happened once or twice before, and I didn't think Lisa had condoned such behavior. My heart wasn't so shriveled as to totally rule out staying quiet after seeing such a humble entreaty from Hagana. And did I know what? I took the receipt from my pocket and handed it to the expectant Lisa. I paid off the interest for you, so pay me back later. Staring for a few seconds at the 200 mul receipt she set on the table, Lisa looked at me with a sigh. So now I owe you now instead. Much better than that baldy, right? Lisa knew she shouldn't laugh but couldn't hold back. She then took the receipt. Well, Mr. Toyama also had a hard time, you know. Well, he does look kind of unfortunate. Hey! I shrugged unnaturally at Lisa's remark and worked on the rest of the stir fry. I knew she had put 200 mules into the cabinet, but when I looked at Lisa's face when she held the receipt, I didn't feel like telling her to get that out. I thought maybe I did something stupid, but if the time came, I could always just ask her to nullify the rent. I stuffed my stomach full of pork and peppers and belched during my next words. Well, just pay it back when you can. I also owe some favors too. Well, if you could put things more appropriately, you'd probably be popular with the girls, you know. Huh. I snickered and drank my tea. I was even a little ashamed of myself for wondering if that's what I was missing. I'll pay you back soon. Well, how soon would depend on that. Lisa chuckled weakly, and Hagana was definitely glaring at me after seeing Lisa's expression. She probably thought I didn't deserve any thanks, but reason didn't really fly with this girl. Thanks for dinner. I paid no heed to Hagana, got up from my chair, and went back to my room. Well, let's see here. I'm just gonna save. How long was I doing this? Oh, gee, longer than I thought. Well, I'm just gonna end this here. So, next part. Let's see how the rest of the night goes. I mean, man, I guess everything had worked out on the most part. So, like, comment, and subscribe, and see you guys later. Have a good one.